Well, now, for anyone involved in politics, social media increasingly just goes with the territory. Twitter, Facebook and the rest are often accused of reducing every debate to just 140 characters and of poisoning politics with venom, fear and loathing. But maybe they should also be congratulated for exposing discriminatory or prejudiced attitudes lurking within our political parties. Catherine Stancheshin has been asking whether or not there are certain red lines online which must never be crossed.
As many have discovered, Twitter can be a disturbing place to be. In recent weeks, 2 Solihull Conservative councillors have faced complaints about controversial content they've reposted on the social media site.
Many leaders of Western European countries treat Islamic culture as a fact of life that Europeans must get used to.
The vile rapists were 3 Muslim men, imagine my surprise, and an unnamed boy.
Defiant London Mayor proclaims, "We will not be defeated." World starting to wonder, who does he mean by we?
The resulting furore has led to both Jeff Potts and Margaret Bassett being suspended from the party, and a motion passed unanimously last week saying discrimination is not welcome in Solihull.
An overwhelming feeling of disappointment and sadness.
As a Muslim on Solihull Council, Liberal Democrat Ade Adiemo felt he had to speak up.
We are in a position of responsibility, whether we like it or not. And to quote Margaret Thatcher, we should not give the oxygen of publicity to people with abhorrent views, because all that does is spread their views. And I think it is important to understand how it also feels on the other side.
There's a question mark over to what extent the councillors involved hold the views they're putting out to the world. Margaret Bassett told the BBC her retweets do not necessarily reflect her opinion. She, like Jeff Potts, says she was simply trying to stimulate debate. Whether or not that's the case, the Conservative leader in Solihull felt he had to take action.
We all have to live by certain values and we have to respect those values. The other thing is about members is quite clearly they represent communities and they do have influence. So I think if I, as a leader, find there's something I'm not quite happy with, I think the right course of action is to act swiftly.
Of course, strong and sometimes unacceptable views have always been present in political parties, just like in the general population. What they haven't always been is published and subject to immediate scrutiny. Some say the best thing about 2017 is that we can now much more easily call them out when we see them. At last month's conference, Labour tightened up the rules on what it means by bringing the party into disrepute. It's been dogged with allegations of anti-Semitism, and this member welcomes the new rules.
As a member of the Jewish community, I'd have to say that I have experienced anti-Semitism, but only in a very minor way.
Do you think that Labour has been successful in dealing with this?
Not as successful as it might be, but I'm very encouraged by the rule change adopted by the Labour conference recently, which will strengthen the party's ability to deal with any kind of prejudice or intolerance towards a protected characteristic. Doesn't matter whether it is faith, whether it's Islamophobia or anti-Semitism, or whether it's gender or marital status or sexual orientation. The rule change will allow the Labour Party to act much more effectively.
In the not always brave new world of social media, there are problems too with abuse aimed towards politicians and anonymity. Conservative Sir Patrick McLaughlin has just submitted a proposal to the Standards in Public Life Committee, calling for all campaigners who are tweeting to be forced to reveal their true identities. As social media and politics become ever more entwined, it's hard not to see more problems looming on the digital horizon.
Catherine Stancheshin and Solihull's Conservative Council leader Bob Slay has come under a certain amount of fire from the Green Party opposition group. They say he should have taken an even firmer line with those councillors to make it abundantly clear that there are certain lines of argument that are simply, completely, utterly unacceptable.
Well, I wouldn't disagree with that, but I think the first point to make is that there are thousands of councillors across our region, across the West Midlands, who are doing a brilliant job, working hard, most of whom I suspect now are on social media. It's difficult to be a politician, as you pointed out in your introduction, to be a politician without having that presence. So let's give credit to those who've done a great job and recognise that there are a handful who've done things wrong, probably on both parties, but I'm pleased that the Conservative Party have taken action and suspended those who have retweeted retweeted inappropriate tweets. And I would add that I do think a retweet is an endorsement of the original tweet, unless you put some additional comment in there that makes it clear that you don't agree with the views that
So
are being
you agree
expressed.
with the Greens, really, who say there's something disingenuous about saying, oh, I don't necessarily agree with this, it's just about triggering a debate?
Well, I think they've been suspended, those councillors in this particular case, and I think that's entirely the right action to have taken.
It's an interesting point, this, isn't it? Because at one end of this spectrum, there is obviously arguments that you just say, well, these are just totally unacceptable and they need to be deplored. Somewhere at the other end, there's a question of freedom of speech, which I'm sure a lot of people are thinking about at home at the moment. Where is the borderline between those two things? Because we do hear, in the universities talking about safe areas and so on. Where do you draw the line between the two?
I think this is a new media, so people are just getting used to being able to say effectively what they like, and that's quite unusual. You wouldn't expect to say that to someone's face or in writing or now even in an email. So I think we have to accept that social norms have gone. But it is about a civilised society. It is about saying certain things are unacceptable, you can't say it. And I think as we move on, people are beginning to realise. Now, the younger generation I know are already moving away from Facebook and onto something else. So, and when you started, Patrick, I'm sure you didn't use the word blog, which you do now very frequently.
Or even posting.
No. So now we're moving into a different kind of area, which is right. It's good that technology is taking on. And as a result of that, we need to have those social mores, the social conduct that we conduct ourselves in normal life.
Okay, and we saw there that your party has been dogged by this question of anti-Semitism, and we saw tighter rules there at the party conference. Is that enough? Does that go far enough? Because it does seem a very fundamental issue for Labour.
There's always an extreme element who will go over the top. Obviously, as someone with a BME background, I've faced racism and sexism as well. But and you shouldn't have to deal with it. There are certain things that there are unacceptable. But that's been dealt with. I've known the leader of the party, Jeremy Corbyn, for years, and he is one of the most anti-racist person that you could possibly imagine.
Final brief word on this from you, Mark. What do you make of it all?
Well, I think people just need to understand that you shouldn't put anything on Twitter that you wouldn't be willing to say to somebody's face. And I do think, though, that the nature of our political discourse has changed and things have become more difficult. And we saw that a great deal in the general election. Of course, there was a debate in Parliament when 35 MPs took part about the abuse of social media.
But Patrick's right. Patrick McLaughlin's right.
Okay.
You can't hide behind anonymity.
Okay, thank you. Right, it's time now to find out what other